Hello to all of you. Yes, even the over 1 million Harry Potter fans watching right now, including the 40% who still haven't hit that subscribe button. Let's dive into a theory that's been circling the wizarding world, and it's bound to stir up some serious emotions. For quite some time, I've believed that J.K. Rowling, who certainly doesn't need another penny to her name, agreed to move forward with the upcoming Harry Potter TV series for one underlying reason: to slowly erase Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson from the legacy of the franchise. Strange as it sounds, it does line up with some of the choices being made. If you look closely, many of the set designs and costumes for the show carry an uncanny resemblance to the original films, almost as if they're preparing to swap Emma and Daniel out and seamlessly replace them with the new cast, not only in the series, but also across merchandise, promotional campaigns, and even the beloved theme parks. And honestly, with the way casting has been unfolding, that theory didn't seem too far-fetched. At least, that was my perspective. Until the controversy around Black Snape hit the headlines. Maybe, just maybe, Rowling saw that as a trade-off she was willing to make. Because once again, she's right back in the spotlight. Not quietly this time, but with a thunderous response. So let's not drag our feet here. The headline is crystal clear. The legendary author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, has just gone nuclear on none other than Emma Watson. And depending on which way you frame it, you could say Rowling either scorched the earth beneath her former star, or completely wiped her from the sky like some tragic character falling from the astronomy tower.
Why aren't you all copying this down?
The answer lies in Emma Watson's latest appearance. After years of keeping a relatively low profile and stepping away from Hollywood, Emma recently resurfaced on a podcast. Instead of easing back into the spotlight, she touched on old wounds, the kind of wounds that have defined Rowling's public controversies for the better part of a decade. And let's just say, it did not go over well. For anyone who has been blissfully unaware, or perhaps living far away from this ongoing storm, here's a quick refresher. The divide between Rowling and several Harry Potter stars stems from her outspoken stance on gender and identity. The short version: Rowling has made it very clear where she stands on the issue, famously summing it up with her own words that sparked global outrage. Boys are born with penises, and girls are born with vaginas. And from that moment, a cultural war began, one that continues to ripple through the fandom to this day. Quick update for context. Just last week, Rowling once again doubled down on her views in a series of posts on X, further alienating former supporters. The timing couldn't have been worse for Emma's comments to resurface. Now, here's where things get even messier. Over the past several years, both Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson have made multiple public statements that, in many ways, threw J.K. Rowling straight under the proverbial night bus, the very woman who gave them the roles that defined their careers. Yes, Rupert Grint, our Ron Weasley, also shared his perspective, but his comments never carried the same sting. Still, to Rowling, betrayal is betrayal. In fact, back in March, she made her feelings crystal clear when someone asked her on social media, "Which actor or actress instantly ruins a movie for you?" Rowling's cheeky reply was short but sharp. 3 guesses. The implication? Impossible to miss. Fast forward to now, and the climate has shifted. Publicly bashing Rowling isn't as trendy as it once was. Many cultural tides have turned, and what once felt like an unstoppable wave has lost much of its force. And that's exactly when Emma Watson decided to step back into the arena. Just a few days ago, Emma resurfaced on a podcast. And let me tell you, what came out of her mouth was the verbal equivalent of walking barefoot across a minefield. Here's what she said, in her own winding way. Open quote, "I don't believe that just because I've had certain experiences, or because I hold certain views, that it takes away from the love and respect I have for Jo. I'll always treasure the personal relationship I had with her. I don't think it has to be either or. My deepest wish is that people who disagree with me can still love me, just as I hope I can continue loving those I disagree with. What matters most isn't always what we believe, but how we express it. And right now, I feel like we're living in a world where people are treated as disposable. I don't believe anyone is disposable. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." Close quote. On the surface, it sounds like an olive branch, but the way she said it, Confusing, meandering, and almost impossible to pin down. To many listeners, including Rowling's supporters, it came off less like wisdom and more like a clumsy attempt to please everyone without truly saying anything at all. To put it bluntly, her rambling speech boiled down to the most overused phrase in the book: let's agree to disagree. But even that, Emma couldn't quite bring herself to say directly. Why? Because if she did, her activist allies would likely turn on her in a heartbeat. And that, ironically, is the very corner Emma Watson now finds herself in, trying to straddle two worlds while slowly losing the trust of both. And here's where things really took a sharp turn. Honestly, Emma probably should have led with that so-called peaceful podcast message years ago, but that Hogwarts Express left the station long ago. Because this time, J.K. Rowling didn't stay silent. She fired back, and her response was sharp, articulate, and absolutely brutal. Rowling began with a tone of reason, stating that no actor owes her loyalty simply because they once starred in her creations. Emma Watson, Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, they all have the right to their own beliefs, especially when it comes to gender identity, which is legally protected. Rowling added that she would never want to see any of them face threats to their careers, or worse, face violence or intimidation for their views. But then, her tone shifted. Rowling accused Emma and Daniel, in particular, of overstepping. She pointed out that years after the Harry Potter films ended, they continued to act as if they were spokespersons for the wizarding world, publicly criticizing her at every opportunity, as though their association with the franchise gave them special authority over her voice. In Rowling's own words, they were little more than actors reading lines she had written, yet they treated her like a villain in her own story. Translation? She sees them as ungrateful, opportunistic, and far too comfortable biting the very hand that built their careers. But what truly stung Rowling wasn't just the public statements. It was one very deliberate jab. Many fans will remember Emma Watson's BAFTA Awards appearance, where she proudly declared, "I'm here for all the witches." On the surface, harmless, but many interpreted it as a thinly veiled dig at Rowling. The audience laughed and applauded, and the clip went viral. Emma later brushed it off, insisting she had simply said, "by the way," not except for one. Still, she never outright denied the shade, and Rowling hasn't forgotten. According to Rowling, that was the turning point. But what followed cut even deeper. Around that same time, when Rowling was facing a tidal wave of death threats, abuse, and harassment, Emma allegedly asked someone to deliver her a handwritten note. The entire message? Just one line. "I'm sorry for what you're going through." To Rowling, that was almost insulting. She had Emma's phone number. Emma could have reached out directly. Instead, the public attack came first, and the shallow sympathy came second. And Rowling didn't stop there. She took aim at Emma's privilege, claiming Watson has lived such a sheltered life, protected by wealth and fame, that she doesn't even realize how disconnected she is from the struggles of ordinary women. Rowling reminded the world that she herself had once lived in poverty while writing the very books that catapulted Emma to stardom. She had first-hand experience with hardship, crisis centers, and the vulnerable women whose rights, in her view, are being eroded by the very ideology Emma supports. Then came the final twist of the knife. Rowling suggested that Emma's sudden shift, the attempt to sound more conciliatory on the podcast, wasn't genuine. Instead, Rowling accused her of changing her tune simply because attacking Rowling is no longer fashionable in 2025, the way it was 5 years ago. And with that, Rowling admitted that had Emma kept quiet, she might never have unleashed such an unfiltered, cutting response. But Emma spoke, and Rowling, it seems, has finally had enough. Now, let's not forget, Emma and Daniel weren't the only ones who distanced themselves from J.K. Rowling. Rupert Grint, our beloved Ron Weasley, once compared Rowling to a crazy auntie. Honestly, not the harshest remark in the world, but still a jab. Alfred Enoch, who played Dean Thomas, quietly stepped away too. And then, of course, there was Daniel Radcliffe. His response came with a heavy dose of sadness. In interviews, he said it pained him to see the divide, but that he still looked back at Rowling, the woman he first met, the creator of the magical world he grew up in, with gratitude. To him, she was deeply empathetic. But Daniel also went further. Back in 2020, he released a statement through the Trevor Project, directly supporting the trans community. He wrote, "To all the people who now feel that their connection to the Harry Potter books has been damaged or diminished, I am deeply sorry for the pain these comments have caused." Now, whether you agree with him or not, that moment was monumental. It added even more fuel to the fire, giving the media exactly what they needed to amplify the controversy. And let's be honest here, the press hasn't exactly played fair. Many outlets have twisted Rowling's words, framing her as if she outright opposed trans healthcare. But if you read her statements directly, that's not what she said. What Rowling has criticized are celebrities who, in her view, lend their voices to movements that put women's hard-won rights at risk, while cheerleading medical transitions for minors. She argues that their apologies should go not to her, but to the detransitioners and vulnerable women who depend on single-sex spaces for safety. Still, not every actor abandoned Rowling. Some stood by her, or at least refused to publicly condemn her. Tom Felton, Jason Isaacs, Helena Bonham Carter, Ralph Fiennes, and the late, great Robbie Coltrane all offered more measured perspectives. Robbie, who we'll always remember as Hagrid, once said, "I don't think what she said was offensive. There's a whole generation of people waiting to be offended. They wouldn't have lasted through the war, would they?" And here's the truth that often gets buried. J.K. Rowling's views may be divisive online, but in the real world, she still has overwhelming support. The numbers don't lie. Remember those claims that her book sales had collapsed because of the backlash? Well, in 2018, reports showed Rowling had sold over 500 million books. By 2023, that number had climbed to 600 million. Hardly a downfall. In fact, go to any Barnes & Noble in America and Rowling dominates the shelves more than any other author. Her empire keeps expanding. The video game Hogwarts Legacy became a global bestseller, despite online boycotts. The Wizarding World attractions at Universal Studios remain packed, with some visitors waiting up to 3 hours just to ride Hagrid's Magical Creatures motorbike adventure. And now, the expansion continues with Epic Universe at Universal Orlando Resort, a massive new addition that features an entire Wizarding World section. Meanwhile, Rowling's publishing company, Pottermore, posted record profits, nearly £49 million in revenue last year. Even the films aren't slowing down. Regal recently hosted a full Back to Hogwarts marathon, bringing all 8 movies back to theaters. And for anyone at home, the franchise is still streaming strong on HBO Max and Peacock. So despite everything, the outrage, the headlines, the boycotts, Rowling's magical empire hasn't weakened. If anything, it's stronger than ever. And the Wizarding World keeps on expanding. This November, Audible is launching a brand new Harry Potter audio drama, a full-cast production that, in some ways, might even outshine the upcoming TV reboot. With talents like Hugh Laurie stepping in as Dumbledore, fans are already buzzing with excitement. And honestly, that's some inspired casting. Even Riz Ahmed taking on Snape feels more fitting than the controversial Black Snape choice that stirred so much backlash earlier this year. Yes, the highly anticipated Harry Potter series is still on track to premiere on HBO in 2027. And make no mistake, it has the potential to be the streaming giant's biggest phenomenon since Game of Thrones at its height. I'll be the first to admit, I'm a massive fan of this universe. For millennials, Harry Potter is what Star Wars was for earlier generations, a cultural cornerstone. It's one of the few mega franchises that has managed to stay intact without being completely wrecked by endless reboots and spin-offs. And that's why some of the creative choices for the new series feel so baffling. The decision to cast Snape in such a radically different way is, in my view, the single biggest threat to the show's success. It's not about the actor's talent. Papa Essiedu is brilliant, and he'd make a fantastic Kingsley Shacklebolt. But as Snape, that's a harder sell. Fans can't help but wonder, will the character suddenly have straightened hair? If so, are we really supposed to believe Professor Snape is styling his hair in front of the mirror before tormenting students? And don't even get me started on the bizarre female Voldemort rumor. While most agree it's probably nonsense, the fact that people even considered it believable says a lot about the uncertainty surrounding this adaptation. But here's the ultimate irony. For all the drama, all the public battles and all the outrage, Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe might actually get exactly what they wanted all along. If the HBO series succeeds and new actors redefine these iconic roles, the faces of Harry Potter will no longer belong to Emma and Dan. The legacy they've spent years trying to distance themselves from will finally shift to someone else. Which means, in a strange twist of fate, their connection to J.K. Rowling, the very association they've wrestled with for years, may end up fading away naturally without another word from either side.